lesson, we learned about straight line graphs. For any straight line, it will have the most basic equation of y equals to mx plus c, where m stands for gradient, c stands for y-intercepts. So how do we find gradient? Gradient is found by any 2 points in the Cartesian coordinate system. Now the rule of thumb suggests to us that you will usually name the point on the left as 1 and the point on the right as 2, but it doesn't really matter. You can use the point on the right as 1, point on the left as 1. That doesn't make any difference. If you follow it consistently, you will get the same gradient. Y-intercept, as the word suggests, is when x equals to 0. When x equals to 0, figure out the values of y. That is what the y-intercept looks like. So this is y-intercept. The gradient is how much it has the steepness of the line. So several features we can talk about regarding the lines, especially gradients of the line, is when m1 equals to m2, we say these two lines, line number 1 and line number 2, are parallel to each other. This is what we would say. And when we would like to figure out if two lines are perpendicular to each other, we will then say m1 times n2, whether or not they are equivalent to -1. For an example, in this particular example, if line 1 has an equation y equals to 2x plus 1, line 2 is perpendicular to y1, what is the gradient of line 2? Because line 1, m1 is 2, and we understand that m1 and m2 has to be -1 because they are perpendicular to each other. Substitute the values in, you will be able to determine that m2 has to be 1/2. So for other things we should also be aware of, include number 1, what are midpoints. So for you to figure out the midpoint of point 1 and point 2, really you're just using half of everything. Half of s1 plus s2 divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. This is how you locate this one point that is in the middle of these two endpoints. The length of any segment given by 2 points, determined by 2 points, defined by 2 points, can be found using the distance formula. Perpendicular bisector is a line that is a very special line that helps not only split the two parts into equal distance, but is also perpendicular to the line segment formed by both the original points P and Q. So this is what we call the perpendicular bisector. And what you see on the left hand side is a series of steps that you can follow to figure out perpendicular bisector, including figure out the midpoint, determine the gradient, and then also determine the gradient of the perpendicular line using the perpendicular definition, and also once again use the definition of straight line to determine that perpendicular bisector. More often than not, we will encounter a situation where we have to linearize, non-linear equations, right? We have to linearize non-linear equations. A very classical example that are relevant to you is how we linearize exponential equations. So in this particular case, you can see that we have y equals to ab to the power of x. In this case, it seems that it is very difficult to visualize or to draw this, right? But if you apply log on both sides, you can then apply the logarithmic, some of the law of logarithmic, and then you will realize that you can split this into 2 parts, and you can rewrite this. Okay, so this is your y, this is your gradient, this is your y-intercept. So that's how we will be able to figure out, right? This is how we will be able to linearize nonlinear equations, okay? So here are some of the practice problems we're going to share with you, and then please work on the additional reading materials exercises. We'd like to figure out the equation of line passing through these 2 points. First of all, we can figure out the gradient. Gradient is 6 minus 2, 5 minus 3, 4 over 2. Gradient is 2. So y equals to ms plus c. We can use substitutions. Substitute any of the point. For example, 3, 2. So 2 equals to 2, 3, c. C equals to negative 4. And eventually y equals to 2x minus 4 is going to be the answer for the first problem. For the second questions, we have a line, and then we would like to figure out the equation of a line that is parallel to it. So it has a gradient of 3, because in the previous equation we can determine that by just reading it. It follows the layout, the format of y equals to ms plus c. Gradient is 3, and the point is 1 and negative 2. We use the similar method. Y equals to ms plus c. We can use substitutions to determine the values of c. C equals to 5. So the equation of the line is y equals to 3s plus 5. So that would be the answers for question 2. Question 3, we would like to determine midpoint. So midpoint, as we have mentioned, is half of x and y. So you just have to add up and divide by 2. So midpoint is 2.5 as well as 5. The distance or the length can be obtained using the distance formula. 4 minus 1 square plus 7 minus 3 square. This 3 square, there's 4 square. Ended up that is 25. And then it has a length of 5. Next, we would like to transform that equation. Y equals to 2x to the power of 3 plus 1. This is already in the linear form already. If you assume the x is actually x to the power of 3. Yes. If you assume x is x to the power of 3, you are already drawing it as if it is a linear form. Right? So the key information is your x is labeled as x to the power of 3 because you would like to satisfy the format of y equals ms plus c. So the x is not x but x to the power of 3 according to the question requirement. So this is ax to the power of 2. Again, we can transform this into a linear form by assuming your x-axis label is actually labeled as x squared. So the gradient of the graph is 4. It will then mean your a value is 4 because it has to satisfy the format of a linear line, which is y equals ms plus c. So if y equals to y, if x squared equals to x, then a must be equivalent to m. That is the reason why your a value must be the values of gradient, which is 4. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.